All right, Mr. Chair, it's 6 o'clock. We can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. It is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance online, and then anyone else who raises their hand, either virtually or online. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Josh. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, then the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago, with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mantoro. Malloy.
Here.
Otter.
Here.
Parks.
Here.
Owens.
Here.
Sales.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. I don't have the sign-in sheet for the items whenever someone wants to grab those. Next item up on the agenda is minutes acceptance for the Historic Preservation Work Session and Commission minutes from July the 28th, 2025. Do I hear any revisions or corrections, or if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Otter.
I move to approve the Historical Preservation Work Minutes from July 28th, 2005, and the Historical Commission's minutes from July 28th, 2005.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Malloy.
Aye.
Otter.
Abstain.
Parks.
Aye.
Owens.
Aye.
Sales.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
5 in favor, 1 abstain. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Next item is creation of consent agenda. We have no items available for the consent agenda this evening. With that, we will move directly into new business. First item of new business is DRH 25-00156, revised findings for 310 North Avenue D Avenue. This is not an item for public hearing, but is there any presentation from staff on this item? Okay, very good. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve revised findings.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Otter.
I move to approve the revised findings for DRH 25-00158.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Malloy.
Aye.
Otter.
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
Owens.
Aye.
Sales.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
All in favor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item for new business is DRH 25-00158 at 1312, 1328, and 1334 East Lewis Street. Could we have the report from staff?
This is the aerial map indicating where the three properties are located on the north side of Lewis Street between Walnut Street and Haynes Place. Here's the site plan showing the Warm Springs parcel in blue and the three subject parcels fronting Lewis Street. These are context mapping images. To the left is the aerial view looking east along Warm Springs Avenue, showing the subject parcels in green and the residential areas outside of the historic district in the magenta. And to the right is that view looking to the south. Here are photographs in the vicinity demonstrating that these are contemporary houses that primarily feature driveways with attached garages towards the front of the residences. The three parcels fronting Lewis Street, being B, C, and D, were split off from the rear portion of a flag lot that historically fronted 1305 East Warm Springs Avenue by a minor land division that created four parcels, that being A, B, C, and D. Parcel A is the portion where the historic residence on Warm Springs Avenue is located. The historic contributing residence on Warm Springs Avenue still does convey that it was part of the development of the avenue historically. Parcels B, C, and D being split off from the original Warm Springs parcel has led them to cease to comply with the criteria for designation. These vacant building sites fronting Lewis Street no longer exhibit the characteristics that qualify the property for inclusion within a historic district, and they do not front Warm Springs Avenue, nor are they visible from Warm Springs Avenue, so they no longer meet the criteria for inclusion. The residences in the vicinity of the Lewis Street parcel are not historic, therefore these parcels should be developed in a manner consistent with the parcels in the vicinity. Staff reminds the commission and other parties present that extraneous issues not purview to this commission brought up during this hearing should not be part of the deliberation or decision made by this body. With that, staff recommends that the commission, this is, let me try this again because I've only never done this. Staff requests that the commission recommends approval to the city council to remove these properties from the historic district, and I will stand for any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Richard. Questions from the commission? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Please step forward, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Dan Givens. My address is 1220 East Bannock Street, Boise, Idaho, 83712. I am the applicant for DRH 2500158. And good evening. Thank you, co-chairs Parks and Malloy and commissioners, for allowing me to present this afternoon, or this evening. And I'd also like to thank Richard Jarvis for his patient assistance throughout this process. Before I begin, I would like to just state for the record and address a few concerns we had from some of our friends and neighbors in our neighborhood meeting. One being, there was some concern about what did this application somehow trigger or conceal additional development? And the answer to that is no, it does not. The minor land division encompasses 3 R1 lots. That's it. So there's no more development here. The trees on the site are not affected by this application, and they remain. So this application does not affect the trees. And new property owners of record, not the current owners, shall be the responsible party for any future building permit activity, whoever those new owners are. So that is to say, curb cuts and architectural design, and whatever may happen will occur in the permitting process. So the current owners will not be addressing those items. The owners of the property are requesting the removal of 3 parcels, 1312, 1328, and 1334 East Lewis Street from the Warm Springs Historic District. These lots were created in October 2024 by a minor land division, and they now front Lewis Street, not Warm Springs Avenue, and have no historic structures, resources, or cultural significance. The surrounding neighborhood, I'd like to add, is over 170 homes, is mostly 1990s era construction, and all lie outside of the historic district. City code allows for historic district removal when a property no longer meets specific criteria. In this case, the lots have no, no qualifying historic, architectural, or archaeological importance and no meaningful connection to Warm Springs Avenue. I'll run through a couple of slides here. Maybe. There we go. This slide, you can see the white line is Lewis Street with the subject in green. Again, I like magenta over pink. The surrounding neighborhood. And a little different angle looking west. You can see Warm Springs in the far left angle there. There's 170 homes in there, quite a few. This is just some streetscapes and examples of elevations in the neighborhood. Most of these homes are all front-loaded garages. There's a few side loads. I'm unaware of any rear-loaded garages. And here's a subject taken with the red arrow showing its location in the Warm Springs district map right now. And Richard showed this slide earlier. Here it is removed. The area in purple would remain. And this slide just basically asks the question, do the lots meet any required criteria for HD designation? And I think as you go through it, there's no historic or cultural significance. There's no architectural importance because there's no architecture. This is just bare ground. And the meaningful relationship to Warm Springs Avenue was severed when the property was split to the minor land division. And again, I think this really can't be understated, but there's 170 homes around them, all in 1990s era construction. And in closing, I think it's clear the code speaks for itself in this circumstance. We therefore respectfully request the Commission's approval of application DRH 25-00158. Happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you for coming this evening. Any questions for the applicant from the commission?
Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Malloy.
You said there was no archaeological potential. Did you hire a qualified archaeologist to survey the property?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I can, if I may, Commissioner Malloy, state personally, I grew up in that neighborhood since I was about 5 years old, younger than that. There was a very old barn there in the late 60s, which we used to run around and play in. Other than that, that's the only known structure, and it was dilapidated and unused at that time.
Further questions from the commission? Great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Is there a representative of the Neighborhood Association present? Okay. Hearing none, I have one applicant on the sign-in sheet signed up to speak to this item, Carrie Ellen Elliott. Great. Thanks. Welcome. Please come up and state your name and address.
My name's Carrie Ellen Elliott. My husband's also here. We live at 1309 East Lewis. We are directly across from this development. And I did not see our house in the picture of gallery, in the gallery that you had to look at, but I think you received it in your packet. And there are other homes similar to ours on Lewis Street. Some of them recently built within the last probably 20, 30 years. I won't repeat what's in my detailed testimony that you all received in your packet. But just to remind you that it listed 3 concerns that we've been following since 2022, and we submitted as comment at the appropriate time. They directly impact our property and more broadly the neighborhood. I know this hearing is limited to removal from the historic overlay. If granted, we will lose the historic design review process. So we need to know the path forward. We need to know how the new zoning process will address the items that were listed in our written testimony. Those being the status of the conditioned waiver as it applies to zoning and future zoning changes, if in fact that happens. the design issues related to tree preservation and additional driveway cuts. And number 3, the design issues related to garage orientation and streetscape. We personally view the historic district overlay as a great enhancement to our property value, even though we are not in it. We are on section land. At the neighborhood meeting, the project representative stated that the subdivided parcel no longer holds historic significance and that the historical requirements impede alternative design and marketing opportunities. One example that I'm asking you for clarification, I'm not arguing this, I'm just need to know, is regarding attached garages, because the question came up in the neighborhood meeting that attached garages were not permitted in this portion of the historic district. And I went ahead and read the historic design guidelines, section 613, and I do not find that prohibition for the Warm Springs overlay. In fact, I see attached garages on recent remodels on Warm Springs. So I just want to get that from you, that information from you as to whether or not that's a restriction of this overlay. The guidelines in there do recommend side entry or setback garages on the lots, if that's possible, which would be desirable in our situation, because whatever happens on this property happens to us. We directly face it.
Time.
We love our neighborhood and look forward to new neighbors and well-designed homes. Our interest is seeing the best outcomes realized for the new owners, proximal neighbors, street safety, and the overall neighborhood. We've done our due diligence over the past 4 years and will continue to participate in the process. And I want to thank you for your time and your service to the community.
Great.
And I'll stand for questions if you have any.
Thanks for your testimony this evening. Any questions for this person? No, great. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Is there anyone else present wishing to testify on this application? Anyone online? Okay, very good. Thank you. Before we hear again from the applicant for rebuttal, I wonder if Richard or Josh, one of you could help outline what, if these parcels were removed from the historic preservation's purview, how does the new zoning code work?
Mr. Chairman, without having dimensional tables and things like that in front of me, essentially they just comply with the new zoning ordinance in terms of development. So if these parcels were removed from the district, they would comply with the zoning rules in effect for that zone. That the zoning code outlines acceptable uses, dimensional standards, heights, setbacks, everything like that. Number of driveways allowed, driveway widths. So all of that is outlined in the zoning code. And if these were removed from the district, they just follow the zoning code for whatever, and that's where it's difficult for us to try and predict what would be proposed, right? We react to whatever is proposed. So if it's a single family residence, it follows those rules and whatever else is allowed.
So governed by the base zoning of the R1C.
That's correct.
And then there are uses that are allowed by
right. There are
correct.
conditional uses, right? There's any number of options that could take place there within the confines of the zoning code.
Very good. Thank you. With that, Mr. Givens, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, co-chairs Parks and Malloy, commissioners. Firstly, I'd like to say there might have been a misconstruence of the attached garage question. Early in the process, staff had noted that they would likely require detached garages if these were to remain, not that attached garages were not allowed, but they would require detached garages. So the way the lots are laid out, yeah, it's not great when you have a front loaded lot and you've got 80 feet to work with to have the garage pushed back. So, as far as marketing goes, I think it's no secret that there's more flexibility outside of the historic district for architectural bandwidth, but that's all I have to say about that. I think any of the new owners will be delighted to work with neighbors in the proximity to address if any concerns with their existing driveway cuts or whatever that design might be. But again, it's really not up to this owner at this time, and it's not part of this application. That's down the road when someone buys a lots and they submit for a permit. Thank you. I still have questions.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant or for staff before we close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I had a question for staff. How many lots on Lewis right now are part of the historic district?
Yeah, okay. 2. Yeah, it seemed that was about where I was going to go, somewhere between 1 to 3. I just couldn't remember, but sounds like 2.
And the second one is the one on Walnut, correct?
One moment, please.
Sorry, do you have some testimony? Please step forward and state your name and address. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, make sure and reopen the public hearing, and then you'll need to give everyone an opportunity to speak.
Did we officially close?
I thought you did. Okay.
I was one last round of questions before we closed. So I think that's where we were. So great. Thanks.
My name is Patrick Stoll, Stoll. My address is 1365 East Lewis. I am right immediately east of the Elliots. And so we have interest very much so in the property as well. I guess the one thing that I'm not real clear on, and I didn't quite catch this from Mr. Gibbons when he was clarifying or explaining what he meant when we attended this meeting a couple of months ago, and he explicitly said that the reason that they really needed to get it out of the historic district was because the historic district locked them in to happen to have separate garages, separate from the main property. And I wasn't real clear. I didn't quite get what was provided there. Does he acknowledge now that that really isn't a requirement? I guess that's the thing I'm interested in.
Richard, you look like you'd have something to say.
The guidelines, though, there's not a pointed numbered thing in the guidelines at the beginning of the accessory structure or new construction section of the guidelines. It's an overall policy, and I forget the exact language of that policy, but it says through a detached garage. That is what's appropriate in the historic district. The reason sometimes you do see attached garages on Warm Springs, as was pointed out, on the south side of Warm Springs Avenue, there's a canal. So that made no alley access. So a lot of those structures have predominantly detached garages to the rear. There's a couple of examples of historic carriage houses towards the rear directly abutting the canal, and those had driveways that ran all the way through the parcel to the rear of the parcel where they were typically detached garages. And it is a policy, overall policy in the historic districts that garages shall be detached. And some exceptions have to occur because of particular reasons, but detached garages are referred to in the guidelines.
They're preferred, but there are case-by-case instances where they are allowed.
Right, by writ of constraints, where
Correct.
How do you get to it?
Mhm.
Kind of thing. And there are, and as with Warm Springs, there are ways to get to a detached garage by having a driveway run beyond the property to the rear.
Thank you for the clarification.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So with that, I would offer the applicant another opportunity to, since there has been additional testimony, if there are any other items they wish to address and rebuttal before we close the public hearing.
Co-Chair Parks and Malloy, commissioners, thank you. No real substance here other than I'd hate to get down in the weeds on the garage aspect. The application tonight speaks clearly as whether it applies or doesn't apply to code. And that's what we're trying to focus on here tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So it appears we have someone else in the audience that wishes to testify. Would you like to come up and state your name and address?
My name is Martha Daltoso. I reside at 1225 Warm Springs. On the record, I would like to state my support for this application. My property is immediately adjacent to this open land, the back half of my property, and I have no objection whatsoever to it being developed into 3 individual properties or 1 property and being outside the constraints of the historic district. None whatsoever.
Great. Thank you for your testimony this evening. One last call. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to testify for or against this application? And hearing none, since there has been additional testimony, is there anything else the applicant wishes to address and rebuttal before we close the public hearing? Great. Thank you. So with that, we will close the public hearing and I'll turn to the commission for discussion and or a motion.
Commissioner Parks.
Commissioner Sales.
I make a motion to approve DRH 2500158.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Otter. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Malloy,
Aye.
Otter,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Owens.
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to our next item of business, DRH 25-00261 at 809 East 8th Street. We have the report from staff.
The aerial map indicating where the property is located on the south side and Elm Avenue. Was cold mic, sorry. Once again, this is the aerial map indicating where the property is located on the south side of East State Street between Strahan and Elm Avenues. Here is the existing site plan to the left showing the location of the house and the shed proposed for demolition. To the right is the proposed new residence and garage with an ADU above. These are the floor plans for the proposed new residence and garage with ADU above, and the elevations for the residence, as well as elevations of the garage with an ADU above. Here we have renderings of the proposed residence and accessory structure, additional renderings, these are photographs of the existing residence and shed, alley views, and adjacent structures. This is the neighborhood context plan, which indicates the height of adjacent and nearby structures to be analyzed. Small font. The proposed residence does not comply with the design guidelines for residential historic districts and the Secretary of the Interior standards. Per the residential design guidelines, it is not appropriate to add a new building to a site which does not maintain or blend with the heights of buildings on adjacent sites. The proposed residence height is 29 feet 10 inches. The neighboring house to the east is approximately 23 feet tall, and the one to the west is approximately 16 feet tall. The applicant points out that there is a garage ADU to the rear of that residence that is approximately 23 feet tall. However, the height of the adjacent primary residence is the basis for analysis. Therefore, it is approximately 7 feet to 15 feet taller than the neighboring residences. The residences directly across the street heights were not provided, but they are short one-story properties. The only two-story residences in the vicinity are near the corner of State and Elm. 818 State Street is approximately 27 feet tall, and 824 State is the only residence on the block with a similar height to the proposed at approximately 29 feet. Since the adjacent site houses are substantially shorter, as are the houses across the street, the height of the proposed residence does not meet the guidelines. The Secretary of the Interior Standard 9 states that new residents shall be differentiated from the old and shall be congruous with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. The massing, size, and scale are not congruous. The standards require that there be a differentiation in the new construction from the old. This proposed design copies too many details from the historic Craftsman bungalow style to be considered compatible new construction. The multi-light over one windows, brackets, porch post, and other elements of the design create a residence whose historic appearance ties directly to a particular historic style, thus creating a false sense of history. Staff had previously requested revisions to be made to make this residence appear less like a traditional Craftsman bungalow, but as described in the letter of intent, the applicant included the Craftsman detailing based on feedback from the public at the neighborhood meeting. Staff reminds the commission and other parties present that extraneous issues not purview to this commission brought up during this hearing should not be part of the deliberation or the decision made by this body. With that, staff recommends denial, and I will stand for any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions for staff from the commission? Hearing none, is the applicant present? Please step forward and state your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tad Jones. I'm the architect for the project. I live at 1324 Boydston Lane in McCall. My wife and I lived in Boise for over 20 years. We lived in the North End. We also lived in the West End. We also have completed many projects in the North End and the East End historic districts. I'll provide a quick presentation and then I'll stand for some questions. We're proposing to demolish an existing non-contributing home and replace it with a partial two-story home and an ADU in the backyard. I was a little bit surprised by the staff report as we've been working closely with staff, and they had indicated they could possibly recommend the project for approval with some modifications. For section 2.2, the Craftsman style home is common in the East End neighborhood historic districts. It is actually the predominant architectural style and is represented by 127 homes or 29% of the homes in the district. Section 5.2.3 of the guideline states that it is generally appropriate to add a new building which is wider and higher than buildings on adjacent sites if the new building is broken up into smaller segments. It goes on to say that it is achieved by placing the taller masses away from the street. We are borrowing massing and details from traditional Craftsman homes. We're not trying to mimic or create a false sense of history. I think that anyone walking by this home would know it's a new home. We are utilizing dormers, which are typical of the Craftsman style. You'll note also that the eaves of the dormers are just under 23 feet tall. This is the same height as the home to the east. We had accurate surveying provide the height of the house to the east. We are also utilizing a front porch, which is another design feature common in Craftsman style homes. This helps bring it down to a more human scale at the street. The porch roof is 12'6" tall. The existing roof ridge on the existing house, the height of the ridge is 14'8", and the eaves of the porch roof are 10'6". So the height of this porch that we're proposing is right in the middle of that. So that does respect the existing front porch height. The existing home is 24 feet wide. We are also proposing a 24-foot wide facade at the street elevation. We have centered the front facade on the lot, leaving 6'9" on each side. Should also be noted that the R2 zone allows for a 5-foot side yard setback. Should also be noted that this project does meet the setbacks. We also located a kitchen bump out on the west side towards the back of the house. The face of that bump out is about 51 feet back from the edge of State Street and about 32 feet back from the sidewalk, so that it does comply with section 5.2.3. We also note that the ridge line is set back from the street. The ridge is approximately 60 feet from the edge of State Street and is about 42 feet from the sidewalk. Also, it is not a full front exposed facade such as other homes on the block, as we will show in the next slides. Section 5.3.3 states that it is generally appropriate to use design elements such as roof forms, lines, openings, and other characteristics commonly found in the district. So we are also borrowing some detailing and materials from the Craftsman style. This includes the 3/1 windows. It also includes the use of roof brackets. Also, roof brackets are specifically mentioned as acceptable details in section 5.9.5 of the guidelines. We are also utilizing longer roof overhangs, which is typical of the Craftsman style. We're also using brick on the chimney and also on the front porch. This is 1428 Jefferson. This is a home that we designed that was approved by the Historic Commission. This project does set a precedent for allowing new taller homes in the East End or Historic District. So as an example, this home is 29'8" tall. It is also next to a single-story home. This was approved because there were other two-story homes on the block. This is also the same situation that we have on this block with this project. These are some other homes on the block. The first one is on the corner of Elm and State. You can see it's a full two-story and the whole facade of that building faces the street, whereas our project, we have a front porch and a dormer, and then that is all set back and the roof slopes up away from the streetscape. The next house, and that house is 29 feet tall. The next house is almost right across the street, just a little bit to the east. That house also has a full two-story, where both of the two-story elements face the street. That house is 27 feet tall. The house on the bottom there, that is on the corner, kind of down by Roosevelt Market. That house is 24 feet tall. The staff report states that the only residences in the vicinity are near the corner of State and Elm. That's incorrect, as there are many tall homes like directly in the vicinity within about a block or a block and a half. The first home is actually on the same platted block. The next one is right across the street from that home, which is much higher massing than what we're proposing. The next one is a house on Jefferson, full two-story facing the street. It's another house on Jefferson. The next one is on McKinley and State. So we have been working with staff and we have already made some concessions. Originally, we had shake in the upper gables. Also, originally we had more ornament on the front columns. We removed the shake and the ornament from the columns to strike a balance between the Secretary of Interior standards and the historic guidelines. Just to reiterate, item 9 in the standards, new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Well, I think we have to consider also the existing home is non-contributing, so there is no historic integrity to be protected. I did know that staff would like us to adhere more closely to standard 9 of the Secretary of Interior standards, which would be differentiating new from old. Originally, we had a standing seam metal roof on the dormer and also on the porch to differentiate new from old. The owner preferred the look of the shingles on the dormer, so we removed that metal. We would be open to adding the standing seam metal back in if it helped with the approval of the project. So the original, this was a slide that we showed staff in the very first meeting that we had together. This was a project that we did that was approved in the north end. Staff said in that first meeting that the windows, the 3/1 would be acceptable. But then in the concept review meeting, staff asked us to remove the windows and replace them with a 1/1 configuration. We did a mock-up of that and it looked really boring. So also at the neighborhood meeting, we had people ask us if we would add more detail back in. So we are keeping the 3/1 in the submittal, 3/1 in the submittal. And we'll, I guess, let it be up to the commission to decide. But we're hoping that you decide to keep them. I would say 5.8.0 windows and window patterns in new construction, and this is new construction, should be of similar proportion and size to the windows of the other buildings within the neighborhood. The 3/1 windows are common window pattern in the neighborhood. And I could see this if it were an addition that you would want to differentiate, but this is new construction. So it does meet section 5.8.0. We did walk through the home with a contractor in the very beginning design process. We do take it very seriously when recommending to demolish a home. We do like to preserve buildings whenever possible and whenever it does make sense. We do meet the requirements for demolition per the staff report, so we do agree with staff's findings. It was changed to non-contributing in 2009. It was listed incorrectly as 2019 in the staff report, which is just a technicality. But it has been non-contributing for 16 years. That was also a commission hearing. It wasn't changed at staff level. When we met with the contractor, we saw a significant settlement and cracks in the foundation. You can see there's cracks in the patio or in the foundation, a bunch of cracks in the foundation. Aluminum siding and vinyl windows. This was part of it. The approved reclassification states that the home has lost any historic integrity, which we do agree with. On the interior, there's substantial water damage, soft joists. The floor joists are really soft in a lot of areas. The stairs don't meet code. The layout doesn't meet code. You have to go through one bedroom to get to another bedroom. The bathroom is super small. We'd basically have to tear out all the interior walls to bring it up to any type of code. The contractor found asbestos in the home. It's also present throughout the house. We did submit a letter from Jeff Wallace of Wallace Custom Design and Renovation. Mr. Wallace has been a residential contractor specializing in historic homes since 1997. He, in that letter, states, given these conditions, rehabilitation of the existing structure is not economically practical, realistic, or viable. So we do believe it's technically infeasible to try to save this house. Those are just some other photos of the water damage and the general condition. Josh, if you're able to zoom in on that, the right hand. So the existing house has a footprint of 932 square feet. We're proposing a footprint of 967 square feet. That's only a difference of 35 square feet. We were able to do that and maintain lower lot coverage by including much of the square footage in the basement. One of the letters from the neighbor talks about overall square footage, but they're not taking into consideration that over 36% of the square footage is underground. This also helps us keep the massing down. The same neighbor was concerned about the kitchen bump out. Please note again that we do meet all the setbacks. We are utilizing the 5-foot setback, which is the same as what that particular neighbor to the west is also utilizing. We could move our house about 6 inches to the east if that would help the project be approved. There were some notes on the landscape plan in the staff report. We were originally going to remove all the trees. We decided to keep 3 of the trees after the neighborhood meeting and also after receiving the arborist report. There is an apricot tree in the front yard that we'd like to save. There's also 2 trees on the east property line that look fairly healthy, and we would like to save those as well. We are willing to replace some of the trees with healthier trees if we need to. It was also noted in the staff report that artificial turf is not allowed in the historic district. That was proposed in the backyard only, not in the front yard. And it was really intended for water conservation. And we're open to removing that and replacing it with either grass or a different ground cover. If you can zoom in, Josh, on right around where our project is. This is the context plan. I just want to note the higher lot coverage on either side. 807 East State Street has 38% lot coverage. That's the lot to the west. 811 East State Street, that's the one to the east, has super high lot coverage at 47.6%. And we are proposing lot coverage at 35.7%. Also notice how consistent the spacing is between our proposed house and the other homes on the block face. Many of these homes utilize right up to that 5-foot setback. And you can see that in this context plan. Section 5.6.2 states that it's generally appropriate to maintain the spacing of side yards and fit a new building within a range of yard dimensions seen within the block, which is what we are doing. Section 6.1.2 states that it is generally appropriate to maintain a proportional mass size and height to ensure that accessory building or dwelling unit is not taller than the primary building on the lot. The ADU to the west is much taller than the primary residence to the west. This ADU you can see in these photos can be seen from the sidewalk in that first photo and also the one right below it. It is too tall per the current zoning. It's actually, we had our accurate surveyed it. It came in at 23 feet tall. The staff report says that the adjacent primary residences should be used, but since this ADU is visible from the street, we think that it should also be considered. The height of our primary residence also helps to shield this non-compliant ADU's view from the street, which helps us meet 6.1.2. This just shows the height of the other building to the east. You can see it's part of his partial 2-story, some of the dormers 2-story. This gives you an idea of the surrounding home. This is a slide that just shows the density. You can see actually both of the homes to the west have super high density. And then the one to the east has even higher density. You can see the open space basically on our lot. And we are trying to maintain pretty much the same footprint, square footage, like I talked about before, as the primary residence. And then we do have a new ADU in the backyard that already does have zoning approval. This is just another aerial view of it, just looking straight down, give you an idea of just how high the density is on this block. Also gives you an idea of the spacing of the homes, and we are maintaining that spacing. This slide really depicts how tall that ADU in the backyard is. And again, we've labeled that 23 feet in height. We did have a really good reaction regarding the design of the home at the neighborhood meeting. The neighbors wanted to see it have more craftsman styling than we were even presenting. And we do already have ADU approval we do have a zoning certificate approval for the location of the ADU. We're trying to build a nice home that complements and benefits the neighborhood. We spent a lot of time and effort coming up with a design that fits in the neighborhood and meets the requirements of the design guidelines. And we do feel that it is appropriate to the district. It should be noted again, the project does meet all the setbacks and the height requirements for the R2 zone. And we are willing to work with staff and the commission if some modifications are needed for approval. But, yeah, thank you for volunteering your time, and I can stand for any questions that you guys might have.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. I wonder if you might address in looking at the detached garage and ADU, typically when we see those, they are secondary in nature, and the design typically reflects the fact that they are secondary in nature. It seems in this case, it takes the detailing that's on the main that you've proposed for the main residence and applies it to a smaller structure, which makes it feel even more like special or important. And wondered if you might have some thoughts on that.
It does have a lot of the same elements. Some of those, like the brackets, for instance, are structural. They're supporting those roofs. We didn't necessarily from a design standpoint, try to make it, I guess, less important. So we could possibly remove some of those brackets, not the ones for the lower roofs though, because those are structural, but we could tone it down a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for the applicant from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions for you. So it looks like you are using brick on the porch in your renderings. It's white. So, you know, historically we didn't paint masonry. Is it painted, or what are your plans for
We were planning on using integrated white brick.
integrate? Okay,
Yeah, not painted.
not painted. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, so it looks like you went from the 1/1 windows back to the 3/1 windows because it was boring. And I tend to agree with staff. It looks too much like a historic craftsman. And there is like this little nuances of making something fit within the district. So I was wondering if you'd be open to, you know, going back to the 1/1 windows to make it look less like it would match with the historic district.
We would prefer not to. I think we're trying to build a really pretty, beautiful home that complements the neighborhood. And part of that is utilizing these windows and the brackets and some of the other detailing. I would prefer to not go back to the 1/1, but that being said, if it came down to it being approved or not being approved because of the window configuration, we would probably yield to using the 1/1.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the commission, from the commission, for the applicant? Thank you. Is there a representative of the neighborhood association present? Still no? Okay. I don't have anyone on the sign-up sheet for this application, but I do see several people in the audience. Is there anyone from the audience wishing to testify on this application? Please step forward and state your name and address.
Hey, this is new. Thank you. Thank you all for your time and your consideration for our concerns about this construction. I happen to be the owner of the adjacent home that has the ADU that's been frequently mentioned.
Could you please
with-
state your name and address?
Oh,
before
and
we get
I'm
too far?
sorry, Cheryl Heisel, and 807 East State Street. I own that home. It is a rental, so my primary address is not there. Do you need that? Okay. Okay. So just listening to the question of referencing the ADU, I bought the home and ADU at 807 East State Street in 2001, and I've owned it since then. The ADU was already built, and it happened to be built in 1996 prior to historical district. So I've got this, I don't know what you call it, you know, so it's been there, it's grandfathered in, but it wasn't built to current standards because it was built in 1996. The house next door also is got an ADU. You saw the solar panels on that. And that also was built approximately in the same time frame. So just wanted to reference that ADU is not historical. Yes, and it shows that in there, the height and everything. That's just what's been there when I bought it in 2001. When was the historical district in that east end put in, if I may ask? When was that?
Richard, do you know that off the top of your head?
Thank you.
2002.
Great.
We're 99.7% certain.
Great, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in 1996. So just wanted to reference that. about that ADU and my ADU. The other thing is just mainly the front look of our block. So we've got 4 lots in there, and the subject is one of those 4 0.1 acre lots. And so they're very small. The house that is obviously non-historical, that is being asked to be demolished. I understand that there's quality things there that have to be addressed. It's like when Roosevelt Market down the street was done. The historical district, they left the sides of the tore the whole thing down, but they left the size and the main footprint of that building when they did it. And I guess that's just in my concerns was to stay with that footprint if possible, just as they did with the Roosevelt Market when they took that down as historical or contributing. I guess that was mainly it, just the total view of that block on our 0.1 lots are this single level look, this bungalow look. And I don't know. I did the home that is being reviewed for approval is just out of that norm. It does not meet anything about that or across the street.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony this evening.
So thank you.
Great. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Please step forward and state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Erin Wharton. I live at 310 North Strawn Avenue, so I'm 3 houses down from the proposed project. I'd like to support the project's incorporation of the historic elements to a craftsman home. I believe that'll help it blend into the neighborhood more. Although I realize that the Secretary of Interior guidelines is to distinguish new construction from old construction, it will still be distinguishable just based on the materials. And I think it would blend in a lot better than having something that doesn't look like it belongs in the neighborhood. I think by having the new construction not have those historic elements into the craftsman design that were originally proposed, we're basically enabling a slow migration from a historic looking neighborhood to a more modern looking neighborhood. I would like the committee, I don't know if this is possible, but I'd like the committee to consider not approving the proposed ADU in the back. Right now, currently on the lot, there's a single-story home and a single-story garage, and now it's being proposed to have essentially two-story homes built on this property. If that is not possible, I would advocate for the ADU to be built along the eastern side of the property line rather than the western side of the property line. The reason for that is the ADU that Cheryl Heisel owns is a primary residence for that dwelling. And so having the ADU right adjacent to that primary residence blocks out their sunlight, blocks out their view, and I think directly affects a full-time residence for a part-time residence. So I think those are the things I wanted to mention.
Great. Thanks for your testimony this evening.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to testify for or against this application? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
Mr. Chair, we do have someone online. I just want to make sure, Claire, that you do not want to testify. If you do, please raise your hand.
Okay. Hearing no one online wishing to testify, the applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to address some of the comments, just to go over how we decided on where to place the ADU in the first place. But I would also like to reiterate that it does already have zoning approval. It has a zoning certificate. We did look at the option of placing it on the east side. It was our feeling that then we would have to have the windows facing the other ADU, which really kind of destroyed the privacy for both our client and also for the other ADU. So we placed it on the west side, and we don't have any windows on the west side. So that helps protect the neighboring property, their privacy, and it also helps protect our neighbor's property and privacy. Also, those windows look directly down into the backyard of our client, so that's another reason for placing it over there. Also, at the neighborhood meeting, we talked to the neighbor that is just across the alley from us, and he really liked that we placed it on the west side. If we were to place it on the east side, then we would be backing up directly into his driveway, where we have it on the west side. That doesn't happen. So we have definitely considered both options and ultimately decided on putting it on the west side, and it does already have zoning approval. Let's see here. As far as the lot coverage goes, I would just like to reiterate that we're almost the same size of footprint as what the existing building is there. And we are trying to maintain as much open space as we can. And we are able to do that by putting a lot of the square footage in the basement so that it doesn't impact the overall openness, and it keeps our lot coverage quite a bit lower. And it is quite a bit lower than all the surrounding properties you can see from that context plan. So I do feel that we've really managed that really well. So, and I can stand for any questions that you guys might have for me.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from the commission before we close the public hearing?
I had one question for Mr. Jones. Did you look at the height at all? Is there any way to bring that height down from 29 to closer to the 23 around you at all?
Yeah, we actually did. We looked at a few different options. So some of them, yeah, we looked at a few different options. I'll try to explain them to you and the pluses and minuses of each to give you kind of a basic idea of what we have looked at. So we could take one, this is my, and they, this is probably the least favorite of them. We could take 1 foot out of the basement height, but what that would do is it would lower the porch height by 1 foot also, or however much we decided to take out of it. We are right now, the front porch is 2 feet tall, and the existing porch is, I think it's about 18 inches. So we could lower that down 6 inches, which we would be okay doing that. That would come out of the basement height. The second thing that we looked at, we could take some out of the main level and lower the ceiling in the main level. I wouldn't want to go much more than about 1 foot on that. Probably the least desirable is we could take possibly another foot out of the upper story, but we already, like our extension walls right now are lower than the required 2'6". We're at 2'4" right now. So if we lower it like another foot, we'd only be like 1'4", like not where the dormers are, but in the other areas. So I think that's probably the least preferable one to do. One thing that we did look at, which could be a consideration right now, we have an 8/12 pitch, which is more standard in the historic district. The minimum in the guidelines is a 6/12. One option that we could do is lower the pitch to a 6/12, and then we would lower the dormer pitch to a 3/12. That would effectively reduce the height by about 18 inches, by about 1'6". Mm-hmm.
Great. Any further questions from the commission?
I'm going to follow up with Commissioner Otter's question. So out of all of those options, which would you prefer the most to lower the height of the existing or the structure?
I think that lowering the porch 6 inches would be okay.
If
I
you,
would put it about the same height as what it is now, and we would just take 6 inches out of the height of the basement.
if you lowered the porch 6 inches, could you lower the top story 6 inches as well?
Yeah, the whole building would come down 6 inches.
But like an additional 6 inches off the top story. So like,
Just the ridge line would come down 6 inches. Yeah. And then the second one I would say would be to take possibly 1 foot out of the main level. It's going to make our stairs a little bit tricky if we do that, but I did look at it and we can make it work.
Can I just follow up? So you prefer those two over changing the pitch?
So I think it's somewhat subjective because when you look at the house from the side, you're mainly going to view the street from the house from the street. If it were on a corner lot, I would definitely say, let's please don't make it a 612. Just because I think the 812 fits into the massing and the roof pitch looks nicer. So yeah, I would probably put that as maybe the third option.
can I follow up? Like,
Sure.
yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
It looks like one of the tallest elements is the chimney.
Yeah.
Is there any reduction in the height of the chimney to be lower? I don't know if there's
Yeah,
certain
so by
standards.
code, we're required to have the chimney be 2 feet taller than any roof that's within 10 feet. So when we get into the construction documents, we're going to be required to have that chimney be taller than the roof.
Okay, thank you.
As a functioning fireplace and
Yes.
right, chimney function. Right. Okay. Further questions from the commission? Great, thank you.
Yeah.
With that, we will close the public hearing and open the floor to the commission for discussion or motion.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'll open up for discussion. I agree with staff's recommendations that it doesn't meet standard 9, that it matches too much with the historic district, mainly with like the massing and height. I think there's also, you know, with the 3/1 windows, that is very distinctive of a Craftsman house. So changing the windows to 1/1s and then reducing the height, I think will also help a little bit as well. So I'd like to see some changes to the design, and I'd be willing to defer it to see some changes and have them come back next month.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Otter.
I don't have as many concerns because I think the white brick with the aesthetics, because I think the white brick is distinguishing in terms of making it look more modern than other historic homes. So the windows don't bother me as much. I'm more concerned about the height and what that does to the neighboring houses around it. They're all 1 story, and I'd love to see it come down a little bit to be closer to the 23 feet that are kind of the average height around, or the highest buildings around it. So that would be my concern. Total, it sounds like we could maybe get like 18 inches either by doing the 6 inches in the basement and the 1 foot on the first floor, or by doing the pitch. And it sounds like his preference is to not change the pitch. It's still taller, but I might be comfortable with that. The aesthetics, I think the white brick really makes it look different. Like in the renderings, it's clearly more modern than like what you're going to see with a traditional Craftsman, which would have been the red brick. I think that makes it stand out a little bit.
Yeah, personally, I don't have as much of an issue with the, you know, the design of the building. It is, you know, it does mimic the form and proportion of a historic structure, and I appreciate that. We've seen some 1.5-story projects come through that do not fit in their form and massing. I think this one does. I think the detailing that it uses is a nice gesture. I don't mind the 3/1 windows actually. But if that's a problem for the commission, I would be open to that. I think and for the height, I think that some careful precision, what's the right word? Slicing and dicing is possible. I'm not a proponent of pushing the porch so that it's too short. I think something that makes homes feel very modern and not of the district are porches that are very close to the grade. A form of our historic districts is that elevated porch, and I appreciate the form addressing that and helping to integrate with the district. I think one of my biggest issues is the amount of detailing on the ADU. It makes it feels very important. I don't know if it's the additional brackets, the additional roof over the garage entry. I think there are some parts and pieces to it that it just has a little bit too much stuff on it. But those are, and I think I agree with Commissioner Otter that the white brick also helps with the structure feel of not replicating historic properties as much, and makes it feel more of today. Open to other thoughts and comments. If we feel we're thinking of enough changes, it'd be really beneficial to see this come back through with some modifications. I think that might be appropriate, but I'm open to other commissioners' thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, I think this house is exceptionally well thought out and designed. I wish more houses were this thought out and designed. I am supportive of the 3/1 windows. I am glad that they're not painting the brick white. I don't know that 6 inches on a house that's 7 feet taller than the next house is that big of a deal to change the whole design up. And so I would support this house as it stands now. I do think there's a little too much flair on the ADU, but I mean, ultimately, this is a nice project that doesn't dwarf the lot coverage, but I think is very important. And it sounds like the neighborhood appreciated the stylings and the detailing. So I just want to say that I support this project if someone wants to make a motion to pass it as it stands.
I would tend to concur with Commissioner Sales. I hear the concerns by other commissioners, but realistically, are we redoing a design to chop off anywhere from 6 to 18 inches? And I do personally like the 3/1 windows, and I think that, as Commissioner Otter pointed out, the white or light colored brick in the front of the house generally does provide enough opportunity to distinguish it from a historical residence. So I would be in favor of moving forward as is.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Owens.
Thank you. I'm supportive of a reduction in the height, even if it is somewhat minimal. I think the applicant themselves pointed out that they had a previous approval that was really tall for the district, but because there were some other houses that were that tall, they were able to get that height approved. I think I would be wary of continuing to approve these really, really tall houses next to relatively smaller like bungalows, which we see more commonly. So I think even bringing it down some would allow a little bit more light to some of those surrounding houses. And then we wouldn't have that same coming into this neighborhood again later and seeing applications that come in. We wouldn't have that same, well, there's a house that's, 29 feet tall, so we can do one that's also really tall. I think it just leads to dwarfing the existing houses there. So if we can cut down even a few feet, I'd be supportive of that. Also supportive of simplifying the design of the ADU. That doesn't seem like it'd be a huge deal in terms of a redesign. And then it sounded like the applicant was open to maybe making some tweaks to some of the craftsman design, like a standing seam roof was something that they talked about. So if we did want to reduce how craftsman it looks, it sounds like there's some small tweaks that could be made to make it look a little bit less of that era. So, and I think one other thing that I don't want to get lost is a mitigation strategy for the trees and just making sure that that is a condition of approval along with the removal of that turf and maybe a different option for xeriscaping instead of just turf, that fake turf grass. Those are my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Yes, I definitely had the trees on my list as well. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Commissioner Owens. I would like to see, and you as well, like to see the ADU more simplified. I think for me, like when you look at that aerial imagery of the ADU, the non-conforming ADU that's 23 feet high, and you look at it in comparison with all the other houses in the neighborhood, and so this is 29 feet, so it's much higher than that ADU. So I think it might not seem like a lot, but when you start driving around our neighborhoods and you see these new houses that are much taller than the historic houses, they kind of stand out like a sore thumb. So I, support Commissioner Owens if she'd like to make a motion to bring it back next month for looking at some way to reduce the height, even if it's just a little bit. I think it'll make a difference.
Mr. Chair, I do think that the applicant has heard the various comments from, those commissioners that have concerns about various things versus those who are not as concerned about various things. And I think that deferral is probably the best response in terms of letting the applicant go back and absorb those comments and incorporate various changes.
Great. Does that mean you're willing to make a motion? And I don't disagree. I think, it's a great project, but I think it could be a better project for the neighborhood and for the long term.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I would motion to defer to our next regularly standing meeting, DRH 25-00158.
No.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. 00261.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sales. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Malloy,
Aye.
Otter,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
Owens.
Aye.
Sales,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for attending this evening. And with that, we will be adjourned.